In 1978, researchers at UC San Francisco conducted an experiment. They took patients who had had wisdom teeth impacts and had surgery. Afterwards, they were in terrible pain, and they gave them a placebo. And they told them, this is going to take care of all your pain. And it worked. Most of them had significantly less pain. But then they did something really crazy. They didn't tell them, but they injected them with a drug called naloxone. Naloxone is a drug that paramedics use when they have someone who has a morphine overdose. Essentially, naloxone comes in and makes it so that the patient can feel everything. It's like if you had a game of musical chairs, and the patients with the placebo, their bodies produced endorphins, and the endorphins went to the nerves and sat on the chair, keeping them from feeling pain. But then the naloxone came in and, like a big bully, knocks them off of the chair, takes over, and makes it so they felt every bit of the pain they had originally felt. Now, this is what's interesting. What this taught researchers was that it wasn't the placebo that affected their pain level. It was the drug created in their bodies.
You're listening to the Overprotective Brain, the companion podcast to the book by Dr. Sam Tyriver and Hayley DiMarco. Before we begin, a quick note. The content on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. If you are dealing with pain, injury, or any other health condition, please consult a qualified professional. Nothing you hear on this show should replace that conversation. Now here's Hayley and Dr. Sam.
I'm Hayley DiMarco, and I'm here with Dr. Sam, and together we wrote The Overprotective Brain. And Sam is a physical therapist. You spent years in physical therapy in that newest frontier where the kind of the intersection between chronic pain and mental health and neuroscience and all those things. And you created a program, and I can never remember what it's called.
It's a mouthful.
It is. Tell me what it is.
Certified Mind-Body Trained Therapist Program. It certifies therapists across the U.S.
That's right. So this is something you're very familiar with, which was why we ended up together writing this Overprotective Brain book, because the idea is very, very intriguing. And so every week we're going to get together and we're going to talk about why we hurt and one thing that we can do to get rid of that, to make our lives bigger and better than they are when we're living with pain. And so today we're going to talk about my favorite subject, drugs. Just kidding. Okay, what if I told you that you could get drugs for free? That these drugs could take care of pain, they could take care of depression, anxiety, and here's the best thing is there's no side effects because they're made specifically for your body. Well, you can. That's because each one of us have inside of us an inner pharmacy. And a lot of us probably know about those kind of drugs that are in our bodies, like serotonin, endorphins, dopamine, but you might not know their power. And you also might not know how to write the prescription for those drugs. So, Sam, I imagine that you have a lot of people that come into your practice that have locked the door on their inner pharmacy.
All the time. People always lock the door on their inner pharmacy because they don't realize that these drugs are accessible to them, even though we live our lives accessing these drugs at particular times throughout our lives, but without really understanding that's what we're doing. We're unlocking the door to this pharmacy.
Great. Well, here's the thing is that being someone who has suffered with chronic pain and understanding how people feel with chronic pain, the more you have pain, the less you want to do. When you just feel like, I can imagine, in the morning you wake up and you scan your body and you think, where do I hurt? How much can I do today? Can I make it to the couch or am I just staying in bed? Because we're really monitoring the condition of our bodies constantly. And so most of the time you say, well, I end up on the couch. That's the best I can do. And so your body then, as if anybody's lived through this, they understand that the more you rest, kind of then the more you hurt. Because your muscles start deteriorating or that, your joints start aching and pain increases. I mean, I guess it's like the idea of telling us, okay, there's a way that we can get out of this, that we can access this inner pharmacy through exercise, for example. Some people might be talking about exercise. That's like saying, I'm sitting in your car in the driveway and saying, well, I'm going to leave and go to the gym as soon as I feel like I've already gone and I'm taking care of it. You know what I'm saying? Like you've already reached that point of being all ready to go. And that's not really how you achieve unlocking the door to your inner pharmacy.
I love your analogy of the car. If
Yeah.
you're waiting to get to your destination from the car sitting in your driveway, I think it's a beautiful explanation. I think it's a perfect analogy. I teach group fitness classes as a hobby. And all the time I get people that come up to me and say, well, I want to lose a little weight before I take this fitness class. I said, that's the point of the class, is to help you lose weight and reach your fitness goals. So take the class to lose the weight. The same is true for an overprotective brain. We wait till we feel better before we live our lives. We wait for our pain to get better, our anxiety to get better, and then years go by. And you go from a 20-year-old to a 30-year-old to a 40-year-old to a 50-year-old with all of these symptoms. It's like we live in the feel. Well, if I feel better, then I can do all these things. And we have to flip that. We have to start living in the do. You have to do, and then you'll start to feel.
Well, I think that's the interesting part is, so if you have the flu, for example, and you don't feel good, you're not going to go do something because you feel awful. And also, you don't want to give it to everyone. Or even if you have a broken ankle or something, you have to recover before you can go do anything. So there is in our minds this understanding that I have to feel good before I can do the thing. But what we're saying is, no, we got to throw that out. You got to start and reorder it till you do it, and then you think how you feel after you've done it, and then you start to feel better. So walk us through that. First, you have what we live with when we have traditional, like say the flu. It's feel, then think, then do. But our prescription is
do first.
Do it first.
Do first. And you're right. We always think of things just in our culture or society that I have to feel better before I do these things. And you hit the nail on the head with the flu. If I break my foot, I've got to start feeling better before I can start doing better. If my foot hurts, I think it feels better, so maybe I try running. Oh, it hurts while I'm running, so then I stop. But keep in mind that is for helpful signs and symptoms. There's a broken bone in my foot, I've got a virus in my body, or I've got an infection. So under those circumstances, under helpful circumstances, the feel has to happen first. Under overprotective circumstances, it's the opposite. And this is why it's so hard for people living with overprotective symptoms, is that you've got to start doing better. And oftentimes, historically in physical therapy, people come in and we say, here, you got to do better. We know you need to exercise. And that goes over like this, like a lead balloon. You get on the treadmill or the bike or whatever, you go for 20 minutes and then you feel like garbage. You go home, you think, well, say I'm stupid. Physical therapy sucks. This sucks. I'm never coming back. And that's what happens. But we've reframed it. You have to do the do, but you have to do it intelligently.
Okay. All right. So let's say somebody's laying on their couch and they're like, you want me to do something? I mean, I don't feel like I'm going to run a marathon, so I can go get my endorphins. I can barely make it to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So that's not what we're saying. But I guess the point is that when you stay in absolute comfort, which is that's where you want to be. I mean, let's be honest. When we have pain, we're like, can I just find comfort and just get it to stabilize? I don't want to even go out and try and attempt just a little bit of pain. I don't want that. I don't want to add on anymore. So if we want to access this inner pharmacy, then there has to be some kind of demand, right? There's a demand signal we have to put on ourselves in order to open that door. Just the laying around is just going to make it worse and keep the door locked.
Yes. When you make the point about we lay around, then our muscles get weaker and we say, well, I know I'm supposed to exercise and I do it, but then I feel like crap when I go exercise because I'm not used to it. I haven't done it in forever, and so I'm paying for it. And that overprotective brain is saying, no, what you're doing is very harmful. It's not good for you. And maybe your body isn't ready for it yet. Maybe your muscles have weakened because you haven't done it in so long. And so, of course, if you just say, well, today's the day I'm going to get up and I'm going to do my 20 minutes on the treadmill, and you haven't done it in forever, of course, it's going to go over terribly. And so our bodies weaken and it becomes this sort of vicious cycle. It becomes harder to move, so we move less. So it becomes harder to move, so we move less.
Mm-hmm. So action is the signature that forces, it's like the signature on the prescription pad that unlocks the pharmacy. Action. As opposed to avoidance, which avoidance is usually what you want to do.
Yes.
When you're in pain. But that's not going to help you access the inner pharmacy at all.
No, if it did, anybody that was experiencing crippling anxiety or chronic pain, lying on the couch for 6 months, they would feel amazing after 6 months. But that's literally never been the case. Resting and sitting on the couch for 6 months when you have crippling anxiety doesn't make your symptoms go away.
Yeah. Okay, so because the physical triggers a lot, because there's no physical, we'll say that, it triggers a lockdown, and then there's a collapse that then leads to the next, I guess, pill on our pharmacy counter, and that's dopamine. Now, a lot of people think that dopamine is like the pleasure drug, but dopamine is really the drug that helps you pursue things, helps you have put out any effort at all. But here's something that's interesting, though. There's this thing called cheap dopamine, which I think is what happens to a lot of us when we're in pain. We're laying on the couch and we want to feel better. And so there is some dopamine you can get from scrolling. And everyone has probably heard it's called cheap dopamine, because you're scrolling and your body's like, oh, this is great. I'm doing something. I'm collecting information. I'm finding out more. I'm learning. But then that sits in juxtaposition to the fact that you're not moving. And so your brain then has this wait. I'm supposed to be in those moments moving. There should be some activity, and there's not. Hence this problem of cheap dopamine. And so then your body slows down its production of dopamine when you kind of hijacked it like that.
You're tricking your brain, and you're not doing it on purpose. It's not, malicious. It's what happens. So it's like, if I'm in a lot of pain, I'm going to smoke some marijuana or get really, really drunk, and you feel okay in that short amount of time, but it's coming from an external source. You're not inherently creating that based off of things that you're doing. You're taking something. So we don't typically think of scrolling or screen time as a drug. It acts physiologically very, very similar. You're getting it from an external source. So then when you take that away, you stop scrolling, your body returns to that crash. And so what do you do to get that feeling again? You say, well, I can escape. I can secrete dopamine when I scroll. And so you continue that cyclical process. It makes it much harder to get out of that process.
Yeah. Okay. So we've lost the ability to have endorphin produced and dopamine. And then what happens, I know this from experience, you're laying on the couch, you're so exhausted, you're so tired, you don't have any of those great drugs in your body. And then somebody texts you, or somebody says, you want to go do something, and you just don't, because your body is exhausted. Even texting can take a lot. And don't call me. That's one thing. Don't call me, because that's exhausting to have to talk on the phone when you're feeling pain. And so you tend to then isolate yourself. And then you're pulling away from another key to the pharmacy, the social connection that can open another part that we need, the drug that we need from our body. So what happens to your nervous system when you lose connection?
Your words are, I think, the best way to describe. You have this isolation tax, and I love that analogy. Like I love a lot of the analogies that you've used in this book, because it makes it tangible for us. We understand taxes. Nobody likes taxes, and that's what you're doing. You're sitting there, and your system is being taxed. You're not creating the oxytocin, this feeling of belonging, this confident sort of social construct that we like being around people, and that becomes pathological. If you are not secreting oxytocin in your brain, then you're not going to want to go and feel social. You're not going to feel connected to others. And so because you don't, you create more social isolation. Mm-hmm. And we know a positive social interaction is absolutely key to secreting dopamine, endorphins, and oxytocin in your brain.
Right. Okay, so the endorphins are locked away, the dopamine's flatlined, your oxytocin is gone, and that brings us to our final drug, and that is serotonin. So in the inner pharmacy, let me just try and summarize this. So dopamine is like your driver, dopamine's your driver,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And endorphins are the painkiller, and serotonin's like the floor beneath your feet. It's what keeps you balanced and stable. Now here's the interesting part about serotonin is that serotonin is connected to your sense of agency or your sense of control. And that slips away when you live with chronic pain. There's a sense of, I would really like to do life, but I just can't. It's almost like your body is taking you hostage or prisoner. You become a prisoner inside this body. And so you feel this sense of, I don't know, I used to be the reliable one. I used to be the one that could get things done. And now I can't do anything. And so you're living with this just deficit. It really is a deficit because our bodies were made for movement. They were made to have endorphins and dopamine and serotonin and access to these drugs. And we're finding ourselves living without them. So speak to that idea of this, when we lose that sense of agency, what our overprotective brain is doing.
So we use a lot of these big words, serotonin, endorphins, dopamine, oxytocin. I know that there are people watching that super duper care about the inner workings of how these affect your neurological system. There's probably a lot of people that don't care. We just know that they're the good chemicals. Our brains will create these things on their own when stimulated intrinsically or extrinsically. And we had been talking about extrinsic factors that secrete these chemicals in our brain, the scrolling, substances, other things. If you don't have these substances, these are your feel-good, happy chemicals. You will go into a depressive state. You lose the motivation to move. Your body becomes much better at creating pain. We get a stress response. So all these, usually what we consider negative things, begin to occur when we're not creating these things chemically. Think about, like the bodybuilders from like the 80s and 90s, and they would take testosterone, and then their body and their nervous system got so used to getting that testosterone from elsewhere, just stopped creating it themselves. And so when they get off of the testosterone, well, you know what happens. The increase in estrogen, they start to grow feminine features. And it was because they were so used to the extrinsic testosterone that their body just stopped making it on their own. Unlike testosterone, we can stimulate our brain to start growing those things back by themselves.
And I think that's an interesting point, is that sometimes people can think, well, you're just being lazy. You need to get up off the couch and start doing something. But what they don't recognize is the lack of those drugs in our bodies are really what are making us powerless, right?
Yes. And I love when people say, well, lazy or trying to get off of this. So this is a Sam fact. Okay. This is something I know and believe. There's no way to prove it. Idiots, morons, really stupid people do not get chronic pain. They don't get overprotective pain. The brain has to be functioning on a typically above average level, that you have to, if your brain is damaged, you will never get really high intensity anxiety. You'll never experience chronic pain. You don't see it in those populations. So when you're like, people are lazy, like, it's the opposite. People become, and I'm going to use air quotes, lazy because of all these things that are happening. It is not laziness that stimulates these things.
It's really amazing when you start looking into how these drugs in your inner pharmacy affect your life. And when we were talking about this, I found this experiment. Experiment, I guess so, but it sounds harsh. It's not. I don't think it's as harsh as it sounds. But it was an experiment done on alpha male monkeys. And they had a group of alpha male. Well, they had a group of monkeys, and the alpha male in the group, he's the guy in charge. He feels comfortable. He's got a safe territory. Nobody bothers him. And they found that in those males, they had high serotonin levels. But then here was the experiment that they did on them. They put the alpha male behind a one direction mirror, so he could see his troop. Is that what you call him?
I have no idea.
He could see all his friends, but they couldn't see him. And over time, he would, he'd try to get them to do things or listen to him. They didn't even know it was there. And he started to recognize his powerlessness. He didn't have any agency. And they tested, and his serotonin dropped, simply because of the condition he was living in. And then after they gave him serotonin, it went back up to his normal kind of confident, cocky self. But that's like the dramatic image of what happens when our bodies are lacking in all of the drugs that are in our inner pharmacy. And this is the key that we're really going to explore the rest of this series. Is there are 6 keys to your inner pharmacy that we can take the key, unlock it, get access to all of these drugs that are very helpful, that keep us then from having to take maybe a prescription painkiller or something for anxiety. And these 6 things are not hard. I can say that from experience, because when you gave me the list, I recognize it going, I can do this. This is not challenging. So I'm excited about those. Anything else you would like to say about those?
Yeah, the 6 keys to the pharmacy, however you want to call them, this isn't something that I made up. This isn't something that Sam created. I mean, we recognize these things. Other people have recognized it too, that every medication that you take for pain, for muscle relaxer, for depression, for anxiety, is essentially doing something neurologically or neurophysiologically that a pain medication or an over-the-counter medication would do, or that you could just do by yourself. And we don't realize that. So when I take an opioid, or I take an addict shoots up with like crack or meth or something, it is not the drug that causes that immediate endorphin release. There's a pathway for those illegal drugs. It's a very quick pathway, but that happens from the brain itself. If you remove the person's brain, they would never feel the effects of those drugs. And I'm telling people, and you're firsthand evidence, as long as many of my patients, you can do this on your own. You can access all of those immense pleasurable feelings, those good feelings within yourself without drugs.
Right. So the thing is, though, you can't think your way through it. People can't say, well, he told me that, or even if we tell you all the 6 keys, just knowing them isn't enough. You actually have to, as you said earlier, do.
Yeah.
You have to do something about it.
And it's funny, because if you would have said 10 years ago, Sam, you're going to tell people to think away their pain, I would have said that's total BS. But there are thought exercises that you can do that stimulate a very physical, tangible neurological response that ends in your pleasure. and you've done this, and people, our viewers, have done this in their life. They've experienced this. They may not realize that they've experienced this, and those are the things I think that we're going to dissect in the next few episodes.
Okay. Well, your inner pharmacy is there, and I know it, and I know you can access it. You just need to know the 6 keys, and so we'll be talking about that next time. That'll be good. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the Overprotective Brain. If you'd like more, you just can't wait till the next time you hear from us. Look for our book, The Overprotective Brain, available where you get books.
Thanks for listening to The Overprotective Brain. If today's conversation helped something click and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a review wherever you listen. The book, The Overprotective Brain, is available on Amazon, and you can find our socials over at overprotectivebrain.com. We'll see you next time.